When there are periods of anxiety where investors feel like they would rather wait on the sidelines, what we see is Bitcoin and crypto overall is one of the first sectors that feels that. It's similar to like the canary in the coal mine here.
We saw BlackRock see $21 billion in outflows from its ETFs in November, and I believe Elbaite saw its biggest outflow from its Bitcoin ETF in 6 months as well. How concerning is this?
So it's quite rather interesting because in November we saw gold continue to increase, whereas Bitcoin largely followed the AI stocks in terms of price. So it's rather a nice contrast to what we saw in the first half of the year, where Bitcoin and gold were sort of following each other, going steadily up and breaking new records. And even more, as a highlight, in October, Bitcoin also hit a new all-time high, and in November we saw that large slump. However, I do want to note, nothing fundamentally has actually changed in Bitcoin. Nothing, no major news stories has really come out that should have affected the price this much. This is largely more of a global macroeconomic event than really a Bitcoin event.
Bitcoin was once described as sort of digital gold. Do you think it's lost that safe haven appeal and is now much more seen as a risk asset?
So I think it's now being seen more closely and more related to AI stocks. And what we've seen is a lot of clients that have got exposure to AI have got also exposure to Bitcoin and crypto overall. And so it makes sense where there is some anxiety around potentially an AI bubble forming and pulling back some of that investment from the AI sector, that they would be looking to also reduce their risk overall in their portfolio, which includes their Bitcoin exposure. And I always say nobody gets into trouble for them selling their Bitcoin. It's the easiest way to pull liquidity. It's one of the most liquid assets on the planet. It can be traded 24/7. So when there are periods of anxiety where investors feel like they would rather wait on the sidelines, what we see is Bitcoin and crypto overall is one of the first sectors that feels that. It's similar to like the canary in the coal mine here.
And how much of a role are ETFs playing in this? They just exacerbate that liquidity piece?
So ETFs largely played a role to enable institutional investors to get exposure to crypto. And the story for 2025 is really the large influx of institutional investors that came into the space. We saw that after Trump's inauguration, many ETFs got approval, the Bitcoin ETFs, then Ethereum ETFs, and then other crypto ETFs followed. And those ETFs have been some of the fastest growing ETFs in history. That has now turned the opposite way. The same way that it gave investors easy access to get exposure has also meant that they've also got an easy way to get liquidity out of the market. So Bitcoin is now, it's sort of, the ETFs are a vehicle to concentrate Bitcoin into more easily accessible. And that works both ways, easily accessible to buy into and as well easily accessible to sell out of. So ETFs have definitely played a massive role in the downturn we've seen in November. I might also add that there's a problem in crypto right now in its leverage. It's the expectation that price increases is coming, so leverage is quite a big issue. So when you couple the fact with anxiety and fund managers pulling liquidity out of the markets with a leverage issue, you get a double whammy. And so whilst AI stocks are down, Bitcoin has followed it, but a bit more drastically because of that leverage. When we see Bitcoin down, we also see a large amount of liquidations that follow as well, and that only exacerbates the issue.
Eric Trump's Bitcoin venture has reportedly shared almost 40% of its value in this crypto sell-off. I mean, some of the biggest backers are also feeling the pain.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to share quite an interesting insight here, MicroStrategy, which is a large holder of Bitcoin, led by the famous Michael Saylor, its share price and its market capitalization is now less than the value of Bitcoin that they own. So there's quite a discount happening on its share price, where investors have basically discounted the share price. Again, this follows some anxiety that the global markets right now potentially might be overvalued, that risky assets like Bitcoin may be overvalued, that there could be an AI bubble forming. In addition, there's a couple other macroeconomic events that's happening right now as we speak that has also led to quite volatile trading periods. One that comes to mind is the Japanese bond yields increasing to record highs that we haven't seen for really decades now, and that has led a lot of anxiety as well. So those things, coupled with the large outflows and the leverage that has happened, the leverage issue in crypto, has meant that there's some anxiety about liquidity. Are these funds liquid enough? Can they meet their debt obligations? So I can understand investors' anxieties around this area, but again, I would like to draw the attention here that nothing really fundamentally has happened to Bitcoin for a while now. It's actually rather been a very boring period where we haven't really heard any major news stories, any major announcements. There hasn't been any large-scale hacks or anything like that. Instead, it's the macroeconomic events that is contributing to crypto. And what this is showing is Bitcoin and crypto getting closer and closer and integrating more with the traditional financial markets, more so than ever.
And just finally, this time last year, you told me that Bitcoin could rally all the way to $1 million if Trump followed through on his policies. Do you still have that medium to long-term outlook?
I think never discount Bitcoin. It's never, it's one of those assets where it could easily increase in price in a single week by 25, 30%. So whilst in the grand scheme of, whilst in the short term, there has been a price slump, over a medium term, if you zoom out a bit, it's still the best performing asset in the last 5 years. The only one actually that might come close to it might be Nvidia here. So it's still a great performing asset, and my views over the medium to long term has not changed. This is a period that we've seen before. I've certainly seen worse even periods than this. Why I feel strongly about this is particularly because fundamentally nothing has really changed about Bitcoin. In fact, a catalyst that might be coming up over the next 6-12 months could potentially be further reforms in the US around crypto legislation. And it's probably also one of the reasons why it's led to the downturn right now, because investors were hoping that that legislation and further crypto laws and news might have already come out by now. And so in the short term, investors have sort of repriced their expectations. But in the medium to long term, we are still expecting those announcements to come through, and that might lead to a catalyst over the next 6 to 12 months that could reach a new all-time high for Bitcoin.
Morty Tollo, thank you so much.
Thanks, Alicia.